Yes, I'm here with Jenny Williams, the master psychologist, one of the elite athletes and coaches here in South Australia, talking about how to become the best you can possibly be as an athlete, to be extraordinary. Jen, we've covered off on the ingredients on the first star of what you need to become a good athlete. What about the people that surround the athlete? How important are they?
More important than anyone can possibly imagine, because basically it's the talent of what is put into that star around the outside that actually can make the star bigger or smaller. So, for instance, one of them is a coach. You can have kids are sent away sometimes and they're feeling great, they're feeling big, the star's feeling big, and they're put into an environment where the coach or the coaches that they're around continually belittle them, or actually, you know, you can't do this right. And I've even seen footage that you can get on YouTube of coaches just throwing basketballs at their players, to the extent where it shrinks the star. It makes them look like they haven't got talent anymore. You think about it, your great coaches, they would have made you feel great.
Yeah, I can't recall. I mean, I've seen those coaches and I've played for a couple of those coaches. And in the end, as an athlete, I know I removed myself from those coaches
very smart
because
move.
it was negative learning. And so we all know positive environment creates more success.
What if you couldn't remove yourself? What if you're drafted and you're stuck in that environment for 2 years and you're interstate, away from your family, and you can't really tell anyone because, you know, you're getting feedback continually, and I say feedback is one of the biggest things, but if the feedback comes from other players who aren't experts and they're telling you how bad you are, what do you think happens to your talent?
Well, obviously it starts to wane. You start to, so then we'll come back to what your point is, the people that you surround yourself with. So I imagine if you get put into that environment, you need to make sure that you've got people that you can talk to outside of that environment to reassure you that everything's going to be okay. It would still be a battle. It would be a long, ongoing battle. And you can see why the AFL players, after 2 years, that don't want to be in that environment, want to be home with their family as opposed to living with a host family, quickly get back to that environment. And it's not a surprise that we see them play well.
Well, and one of the other things, though, Phil, is you and I would find this difficult to understand. And I suppose this took me a little while, because we were the sort of people that would actually go, no, this isn't right. Maybe even take a chance and be told we were terrible. And I will continually be told, Jenny, you're too out there, etc., you know, because I will criticise systems if they're wrong. Now, if the system surrounding the star is wrong and no one is prepared to do that, the system fails the athlete. And so when you have coaches, you can have parents who can make their kids fantastic. Funny thing is, sometimes even the greatest parents who just want the best for their kids have a problem, because guess what? The kids don't want to let their parents down. It's not because the parents are pushy, it's because the parents are loving. So again, sometimes even saying to kids, the parents shouldn't be a burden. They should be like a life jacket lifting you up. So the biggest thing is around this star, if you don't realise things like media, if you're continually hounded and told how bad you are, sooner or later, even social media, people, kids and young people these days rely on social media. So you then have to have a system to make sure there's a lot of strength in that. And as I said, if you're under a system that's bad, it's really hard for most people to do anything about it. So they shrink, disappear, and their talent looks like it actually washes off, and that doesn't happen.
I don't want to digress too much, because I know I can do that with you when we get these conversations. But when we talk about coaches, so many stereotype now, and you know, I'm a believer in not one size fits all. So how important it is for the coaches to recognise that what I do with you may work for you, but not necessarily work for someone else. So they need to be able to vary up their coaching depending on which particular athlete they're talking to?
Well, this is one of the big things, absolutely, because when I talked about the Tigger and Eeyore before, if you don't know your team, if you've never spent, I'm amazed at the amount of coaches that have never had the whole team over at their house. My dad, for instance, my mum used to cook, and we would have the whole of Port Adelaide or that sitting in our lounge rooms and that. I still do that as a coach myself, because if you want to share with people, you've got to know the individuals. You've got to know about who will. You can give probably you and I a bit of a rev. We won't take a lot of notice of that rev, other than the fact that we're better than that and we're going to go out and do this. But you can give that same rev to probably 70% of other people, and you will shrink what they do and they won't play as well. And people think yelling at people makes most people better. And in fact, it's not right. And what you just said is knowing your players, knowing how each person does. But the biggest thing is you have to understand, if you're a coach, to make your team great, every one of those stars has to look big. Because if you shrink half of them, guess what? They've gone and you'll never win.
All right, you touched on this, and this is always one that's fraught with danger. Parents that think they can coach, that constantly coach their kids. What's the balance? Is there a balance?
Well, balance is, I say to parents, tell me about your expertise. Now, most of them have limited expertise, or they've learned it from someone that they think, oh, yelling at them is good. Oh, well, why is that? Well, you know, oh, someone told me that. And I'll go back to, I start to teach the parents. Every session I do is the first one's 2 hours, and parents all come in with 18 to 25-year-olds, because then we start all being, we understand this, we're going to move together. And I want champions. I want their kids to be great. And if they do too, they learn when to take the foot off, because I also don't want to have anorexics, people with eating disorders. All of these sort of things happen when people are given way too much stress and not enough love, and that happens.
Stay with us as we continue the episodes on what to put around you to be an extraordinary or successful athlete. Stay with us.